Good Monday, July 7th, 2025 to you. I wanted to take an opportunity in this summary message to share with you some of the predictions that yours truly has made a long time ago and bring them current with you for just a short walk. In 1998, I was sitting in my office at US Web headquarters as CEO, running about 3,000 people in 10 nations as employees. First really seriously well-integrated intranet that defined the entire landscape of intranets and the electronic services architecture that we jointly announced with and launched, funded millions, tens of millions of dollars with Microsoft to build, has led to systems like Zoom. US Web called it Sitecast. Worked with Intel and Cisco and Sun, Microsoft on the implementation of the first video conferencing, and our IPO follow-on quarterly briefings to Wall Street from my office were run as the first quarterly IPO financial statements of a publicly traded company in history. And so it's just a tad of where I was at my headspace at the time, but I was, after the IPO, taking a little bit of a breather from 80-hour weeks down to 50-hour weeks and spending 30 hours a week of professional life developing and launching what became known as the International Space Sciences Organization, which comprised the CIPA, or the California Institute for Physics and Astrophysics, calphysics.org today, that worked in alliance on those two on my payroll, about $20 million over the subsequent 5 years of my money, combined with about $15 million of money from a core cadre of historical investors in my successful endeavors from previous years, Nobel and such. I was reading a book, I believe it was by Brian Greene, The Elegant Universe. He's a very talented mathematician, very accomplished, and widely published both professionally and in popular literature for string theory and its mathematical foundations and theoretical connections to physics. There is no experimental program even seriously considered viable, and I was really quite disappointed in the volume. And I had my old copy of the Oxford Dictionary of Physics from the University of Utah days on my shelf, and I pulled it out and went up to my whiteboard and began to more formally describe in very simple words concepts of physics that are essential to its ontology and epistemology through 2,500 years of serious development since ancient Greece. And so the question is, what is matter? Well, in the common language of physics, it's molecules are comprised bodies like the Earth itself, are a human body. A human being is a very complex molecule made of molecules are, let's just call it constellations of atoms. So I wrote molecule equals constellation of atoms. And what's an atom? Well, it's a constellation of charges. Positive charges, neutral charges, protons and neutrons. And protons are paired with electrons in what are known as orbitals, but are more like, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But let's call it an atom is equal to body of charges. What's a charge? Well, it's moving force, or better said, the movement, displacement of force. Force operating through distance is called energy. Well, what's energy? Well, that says it's basically that which can modify itself, that which can cause change in the motion of itself, is force. Forces in motion are called charges. In fundamental geometries, which physics does not yet grasp as taught. Even today in best universities, physics is still has been a great distance from understanding what that constellation of moving agencies that can change themselves, the agency of force. So it really is a constellation of a pattern of change in motion. That is actually a more concise, elegant description. Back in '98, this is what came as a shocker to me, because it basically allowed me to conclude that in a great resolution of the scientific and spiritual dimensions of my life, the science becomes seen as the way we measure ourselves. Spirituality may be characterized, defined, if you will, as that which can feel itself or sense itself. Emotion, electron motion, or charge motion of that which can cause change. After years of research in those two institutes that I funded in collaboration with the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin with Dr. Puthoff, and in the early years, and the Scientific Applications Research Associates, or SARA.com, an aerospace agency, a company in Southern California with classified wings for defense projects, great merit, was a major financial and technical partner for me during those early years, all the way from 98 or 99 through 2004. Again, with the above resumed, I'm joined by Dr. David Hessinus, theoretical physics professor emeritus from Arizona State University. This progression of scientific understanding of that medium, the light waves wave that makes protons, electrons, and neutrons as combinations, as they're called, and what has been accomplished in the past 5 years is nothing short, in my judgment, between the theoretical foundations laid by Hessinus and colleagues with geometric algebra and its extension, now brilliantly illuminated by Dr. Hessinus's penultimate, perhaps, but ultimate to date masterpiece of theoretical advancement for physics, and that is his paper published in 2024 in IEEE, I believe in first quarter 25, on the nature of the electron, which builds upon his prior paper, The Birth of a Photon, which characterizes what a photon truly is. I take and build upon those concepts to define a physics of holium and holoim, or inside out and outside in, as radial morphologies with curl states that correspond to proton to neutron, and back and forth, projecting an electromotive optical effect of reciproflexion, as I refer to it, and reciproflexion, Flex, which would be the elucidated electromotive force emergent from this medium of, I once called potentum in the first edition of my book, is such. These names are being modernized. What it says, ultimately, experimentally, is that we now have the pathway to understand some of the effects we've been observing in our laboratory experiments since 2009. And I'm greatly excited about the next steps, which will be the topic of future briefings for me. This is a preliminary briefing, confidential to Oleum. Thank you.